Good. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be able to present today. Um, and what I'll be presenting on is the definitions of successfully implementing an initiative. So I came on board with the team specifically because Alpha knew that I did some proposals, and with working for the university, we're always doing research, and we just have a formal approach to developing programs or developing initiatives. So I'm happy to share the information that I learned and worked with over the 20 years that I was with University of Illinois. I went through quite a few training processes there, on about logic models and how to form your initiative, how to develop your programs, and how to evaluate the programs that we implemented there at the university. On the first slide here, I'm just going to just give you a recap of what we're going to be talking about today and what we'll be going over. I'll have an overview, and then we have terms you should understand. We'll spend a little bit of time on the importance of an evaluation, and we'll sort of end with that. And if we have enough time, I have a worksheet that I also included on the last page. And if we have time, maybe we could do some group discussions and examples with that. All right, if you flip over to the next page, the next slide. All right, thank you. I just have a personal experience. This is why I know that it's important to understand the terms. Just a quick little story. When I was working for the university, I wrote, there was a proposal for urban agriculture, and I filled out the application, and this was through the USDA, and I just filled it out based on my own understanding, quote unquote. I sent it in, and someone, a representative, I guess, from the USDA called and said, "What are you doing? You need some help." So they actually sent someone out to help me out with understanding. At the time, I did not understand that there are terms, and those specific terms have specific definitions. I made up my own definitions based on my own understanding. So she came in and we talked, and I learned about a couple of things. I did get a small grant from there. I guess they made it worth my while. But that's why I know it's really important to understand some of the basic terms when you're writing a proposal. The terms will help like as a roadmap, and I'm going to just maybe not go over all of these bullets that I have here. I will be able to share this whole document with whoever would be interested in it. At the bottom, there's information on how to contact me or how to contact the pop-up research station. But basically, it serves as a map. Do all funding sources ask for these specific terms? No. Or they might have a variation or interpretation of the terms. But should you know the terms? It's a definite yes. Not only for writing a grant or writing proposal, but also developing your initiative as you move along. I did on the right side, I gave some recommended resources. One is the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I put that link down there. The many foundations have their own way of, or they have the same terms, but they have their own interpretations of the terms. And it all goes back to what we call, quote unquote, the logic model, how you're developing the program, and then also how you're evaluating the program. The MacArthur Foundation has a great not evaluation tool, but an actual tool that talks about how to develop an initiative and then how to evaluate it. USDA, I talked about them, they have a grade. And so it depends on what your program is. And so I would highly recommend that you look at some of those sources. If you're applying for a specific grant, definitely, if they have guidelines, definitely read their guidelines and their interpretations of what they mean and what they're asking for. All right, the next page. Several years ago, we all talk about visions and missions and what have you, but several years ago, well, it's been about 15 years ago, had an opportunity to tour the Harley Davidson headquarters in Michigan. What impressed me, besides the fact that it was super clean for a factory, a motorcycle factory, but I mean, that place was spick and span clean. But one thing that really caught my eye is that they had these big old signs on their walls that stated their vision and mission. And it was, I mean, they had it almost in every big area. This sign was there. Just quickly, their mission and vision, sometimes people, one thought is that sometimes we can combine the mission with the vision. So sometimes you'll see it done like that, but it is two separate definitions for it. What they had on the board was, we fulfill dreams through the experience of motorcycling and service in select market segments. So any factory worker, manager knew this vision or mission statement. And also, when we had a person that was giving the tour, you could tell that his speak was also reflective of that vision and mission. So one of the first term that we always look at, and what a lot of funders look for, especially in the grant, is the vision. The vision gives you a view of the future. You're looking out. This is what you want your company, this is what you want your initiative to achieve out in the future, out in horizons. And it's important to know that, not only for yourself, but for your workers, for even key players or key stakeholders that are contributing or working with you. One of my favorite sayings is, you got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true? And that's just really important. I especially think that when you're doing community-based or service-based programming, sometimes you don't see your dream come true. You may work on it for 10 years and then you retire, and then, you don't know what happens, but it's still important. I remember that even working with Alicia, we were working on a tip in the Chatham community. And one of them was, and Alicia can chime in here if she wants to, was a new library. And it was like rolled in with a couple of other things that they wanted to happen. But this is something that the community wanted, a really nice new library. Well, I left, extension. And then lo and behold, I have a meeting with Alicia, and Alicia says, well, this is the library that we were working on 5-10 years ago. I said, oh my goodness. Well, it really did happen. One other point I want to point out about the vision is that if a missing or foggy vision can result in confusion. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there. Right, the next slide then is about the mission. And the mission is like your marching orders that the team follows and it believes in. It's like when the metal hits the road, you got this big vision, and now the captain sets it into motion with the vision. With the mission, how is this gonna happen? And then all the time you hear the saying, mission accomplished. Well, that was accomplished because they had a vision and they had a plan. All right, the next slide. All right, this is one of the most important things when you're thinking about implementing an initiative is your goals. It's the plan of action that charts the process for implementing the vision and the missions. Goals are really targeted actions. And also with these goals, key players within the organization, within the community, people who are being serviced, it would be great if they understand what the goals are and establishing the goals because they can help you out. And one important thing is that I always, and I know Alicia knows this about me, I usually name my initiative. I usually have a name for it. It's a tag, it's a marketing, ploy approach and what have you to whatever initiative that I have. And it's also good to have a time period. So, and especially if you notice with many funders, most of them give you 18 to 36 months worth of funding. I don't know why they came up with 36 months or 3 years, but you'll see that they'll have a 36-month time period. They'll have the first year where you're starting it off and you can talk about what happened that year. And then I always recommend that you also stop at some points to look at the goals. Are they being accomplished? Do you need to revise them? Because this is a working approach. If something's not working, you need to stop and fix it, either through reformatting your goals or re-identifying your goals, getting more input, or maybe it's just that your organization or your group is not doing the work that needs to be done. I always say that you should have maybe 3 goals. Sometimes you have 5. I don't know why I go with an odd number, but I usually do. But if goals are not clear, resources may not be used effectively. If you don't know why you're doing something, you can get some money and not use it effectively. All right, the next page is action steps. This comes Okay, the action steps comes after you've established the goals, what you want to happen. And the action steps breaks down specifically what should be done to accomplish each individual goal. So if you envision it in the worksheet that we're going to go over, will help you visualize it too. You have maybe goal 1. And under that goal 1, what are the action steps that you are going to perform in order to make those goals happen? Also recommending that you still keep in contact with key stakeholders, funders, or anyone who would be impacted or that you would like to be impacted by your initiative, and get suggestions from them. Are we looking, you ask them, are we doing the right thing? Who are we including? Who we should include? Is the terminology that we're using correct? Because sometimes the terminology can turn off people, even in the community, if you're not saying the things in their language. So again, I'm talking about really getting input from everybody as you move forward. Let's see, on here, all action steps you contribute to the final expected goals of the initiative. So that means don't do a lot of actions if it's not contributing to what you want to do. And we can get caught up. I know I can get caught up in doing a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not really applying to what we want to do. So reviewing the goals and the action place steps should sort of be cohesive and together. The next term is input. Okay, Alpha, if you would turn to the next page. All right, thank you. Once you have your goals and your action steps, when you're looking at the action steps, then you start planning your actions, what you're going to be doing. And so there's two categories that I think goes into those action steps. It's the input. Input, do you have enough staff? Does that staff need to be trained? Do you have enough money? Do you need more money? Do you have the materials and supplies? Is your facility going to carry through with what you want to do on that particular goal? Do you need another office or what have you? And so the input then is also important when you're establishing your budget and timeline. One of my recommendations, and you'll see it on my activity sheet worksheet that I'll share with you, is that as I'm planning, I list what it's going to cost. If I'm going to develop some materials, I'm going to put that in when I'm doing my input. I'm developing materials. What does it cost to develop those materials? How much time is it going to take? So I recommend not to wait until the last minute with your budget. You should have your budget in mind at all times. And so as you're mapping out your goals and your action steps, jot down on the side how much each of those things are going to cost. How much time is it going to take to do them? And you'll be surprised. It breaks it down, and so it's easier. You don't get frustrated. There's so much to do. If you have it mapped out, then you can say, okay, I gotta have this done. It's gonna cost me this amount of money. I need it done by this certain time period. So that is when we talk about your input, that's what input means. Anything that goes into you creating your or performing your goals. What is it going to take to do that? And then the next term, which is close and similar, but not exactly alike, is output. The output, whereas the input is like stuff you need to do what you want to do. Output is the activities. Are you going to do workshops? Are you going to create products? So that is your output. That is what, if you're working with youth, that is what you're going to do directly with them. So output is more of a doing thing. Input is what you got to put in. Output is what you're going to give out to have your goals completed. Funders and investors may look at output and how it relates to the budget and in the implementation of the goals, or is the implementation of the goals carefully thought out? So again, I was talking about the budget. Sometimes what you do usually have a budget sheet. If there's someone that's evaluating your proposal, they're going to be comparing. If you're putting in a budget, I need $2,000 for a youth coordinator. Well, then something in that proposal is supposed to talk about that youth coordinator. So that's why it's important to work that budget in while you're doing it, because investors and funders are going to see if you have a well thought out plan, and that includes your budget. So a lot of times they start, actually, a lot of times funders or investors start by looking at your budget. Then they go back and look at what you want to do. And they'll see if it's worth their efforts and their money to invest in you or to give you the money. Let's see what else on these budgets. The budget, timeline. Some things I remember we were talking about: staff training. Trained staffing may be needed to accomplish the output. So if you are doing some workshops, you may need to have a staff that knows how to do that specific workshop. If you're doing a workshop on doll making or art, do you have the staff there that can do that? Do you have, and does that staff person have the skills needed to perform the requirements for that goal or those activities? And so again, you might need to put in the budget staff training. Okay. All right. Terms to know, again, is outcomes and impact. That's the next one. Okay, got it. Thank you. Outcomes and impact. I've seen where the terms are used interchangeably, and that's okay. Again, looking at what your funding or your lender wants and what they're defining as outcomes and impact. You'll have to sort of follow their lead. But it is sort of, it's what happens as the result of your goals and the activities. So if you're having several workshops, why are you having them? What do you expect to happen from them? There is a nuanced difference between outcomes and impact, but again, sometimes funders or lenders will use the term interchangeably. Outcomes is more of a personal thing. It's like change behavior that benefits the target population. It might be increased knowledge. Whereas with impact, it can indicate change on a broader level, such as a change in the community. It could be, what else could it be? A change in community, a change in people's perception of what you're doing. So we were talking about a few minutes ago, people are saying automatically no to murals. Do they understand what the impact they're going to have by having that mural? Maybe yes, maybe no. So those are some of the things that you would think about as far as like an overall impact. I have some examples here. Outcomes is as a result of several workshops, more people will be aware of the importance of participating in our new business incubator. So that would be the outcome of all the goal and action steps. Whereas an impact may be citizens are respected, empowered, and have access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that is like a more global look at what the results are happening as a result of your initiative and your goals and your actions. All right, we can go on to the next slide. Evaluation is always a booger bear. Yeah, this is scary. It's scary, no matter what. It's scary. But I think that if you do all the other steps thoroughly, and as you're doing them, think about, okay, if I'm going to do these workshops, how am I going to evaluate that the workshops are doing what I said they're going to do? So thinking about them as you're forming your initiative is most important, rather than waiting for the last minute. I always like to wait for the last minute when you're talking about evaluations, but you really, really shouldn't. Plan your evaluation as you move along. There's many evaluation tools. I can't say I'm an expert on evaluation. I'm not. I read up on it and I ask people about evaluations that I know may have better experience with it. When you're thinking about your budget, you may want to include a budget in there for a professional evaluator, someone who can guide you through that process of evaluating. There's a lot of evaluation tools. It's depending on what you're being evaluated. Tools could be the surveys, tests, data collection, you name it. That's what an evaluation, those are the tools that you could use. Um, let's see, on the next page, and I'm going to stop after evaluation to see if you have any comments or questions or suggestions. You can open it up. And I have on the second page, because I split that out because evaluation is important. Number 2, many funders, investors, and key stakeholders want timelines and benchmarks. And so that can be great for you too, as the program director or the initiative, to put some stopgap guidelines in there. So if you're starting something, make sure you are allowing some time to stop to see what's taken place so far. You could, especially if it's a new initiative, maybe after 6 months, don't wait a whole year. 6 months, look at what's happening. Do you need to revise your plan? Do you need to hire someone, or is someone not working? So I always recommend that you have some little time periods where you actually look at what you're doing and if it's working. Many funders, I know I've gotten funds from different organizations, and they like to do a 1, 2, 3 funding, meaning they'll give me money at first. If I'm developing a curriculum, they'll give me money for the materials and all of that for the curriculum. So that's the initial deposit, I guess you could call it. Then after maybe a certain time period, so say for example, I said it's going to take me 18 months to develop a curriculum. So they're going to give me some money at first. 6, 7, 8 months down the line, then I'll go back to them with an outline or maybe some of the content and show that to them to make sure we're on the right track, make sure that everything that I'm on track and that they're on track with what I'm doing. And if they say yay or nay, you might make some revisions, and then they give you the second installation of money. And you go back, and I will go back and finish it. And then at the end, I will get the final installment, the payment installment. So I know that many funders do a 3-year. For some reason, again, they think that after 3 years, you should be healed. You should, your whatever you thought you could do with your initiative is going to be done in 3 years. Of course, we know that doesn't always happen, but that's how many of them see it. I know the USDA uses that as a basic timeline for you to implement that particular initiative within that timeline. Keeping in mind, if you do it well, then they will be, and it's good to have that, because then you can go back and ask for more money, or you can go back to the investor and say, I've made this amount, I've done this amount, and I was successful. You saw what I did, you saw what we did. Can we have some more money to continue? So periodic evaluation can help you to adjust the goals, activities, and resources. With the evaluation too, it might be nice to report it. Let everybody know what happened. So I guess sometimes that's in your, what is it, the annual report. Sometimes it's in the annual report. But maybe you want to do a special event. This is what we did. This is how it happened. You invite the funders, you invite the key stakeholders, you invite the community. We've been doing this for 3 years, and look at here, what we did. So when you have an evaluation, of course, you need a written piece. And so, for example, USDA may have, no, I had a grant with Illinois Department of Public Aid. I don't even know if they call it that anymore. And then at the end of that grant, I had to give them a report on what happened. And they're going to look at, see if I did what I said I was going to do, and did I get the results that we planned that was going to happen. And I think I did mention before with evaluation, I would consider hiring an expert evaluator just to get some input. Either they can do it for you, or they can give you some specific guidelines on how it should be done and how you can effectively do it. Evaluation is really important, but again, try not to hold it for the last minute. Think about that all along with the process of your initiative. All right, the next page, and this is sort of where I'm ending off, and I hope you guys have questions or comments or what have you. I just want to circle back to that Harley Davidson trip that I took, where I toured their factory. In 2009, I read an article about Harley Davidson, and they were forced with really some major restructuring. A lot of it was because of the Honda got new motorcycles, all these other places had new motorcycles. And so their what would you call it? Their customer base was dwindling. What they have to do is to go back to their vision and mission. So we're circling back now. Once you've done something, let's circle back. How is that vision? How is that mission? So they have to circle back to make sure that they kept with the core purpose of their organization, or the core purpose of your initiative, the core purpose of the museum or business. So you have to sometimes circle back to that. I know with running a business, I have to constantly be aware that things change and things evolve. And if I want to be successful, I have to do some changing and evolving with it. So even with an institution, or even with a business like Harley Davidson, they had to change not their vision or mission, but they might have needed to change how they present it. Who was their target population? Were they reaching them? How do they reach them differently? So I just wanted to conclude with that Harley Davidson, I don't know what their market share is now. I'm sure it's reduced, because at one time they were the major players as far as motorcycles. They are no longer, but they're still in existence, and they're still going strong because they have an identity, they have a mission, they have a vision, and they incorporate that into that factory and everything that they do. So I would say the same thing for us as we're moving forward into what we're doing, always looking at what you're doing and how you're doing it. And it's really tricky that you keep on target, that you keep on mark with what's important. I know with running the business, I easily get sidetracked. So I have managers, advisors to pull me back on track, because I do want to be successful. And I want you guys to be successful at what you're doing. So just understanding these terms, look at who your funders are, who your investors are, what do they want, how do they define success. So though that's really, I think, just is really important. And at the end, you increase potential to make a difference for individuals and communities as well. So I'm going to end with that. I don't know how much time I have allowed today, but I hope maybe you guys were taking notes. Does anyone have questions?
Yeah, you had an hour, for your presentation, but yeah, this is really great information because, last year Daphne and I, as consultants over here for the museum, we were going at it, and we were having those issues of evaluation And then, but we were taking the creative, like criticism that the funders were giving us. We were making sure that when we were given the opportunity for them to look over the notes for projects that we weren't funded, and we saw where our shortfalls were. And and that was a lot of had to do again with that budget, and then making sure that we had someone to bounce those figures and bounce off each other to take another analytical look at the budget. Um, and because then again, like you said, it has to match the budget notes. It has to match the narrative, because those are the questions that the funders would ding us on or turn around and say, well, you said this, but you didn't say this inside the narrative, right? When they started, really nitpicking, because the funding is scarce, so they're going to fund it to people that really. But if they really want you to have the funding, they had started saying, okay, we're going to do these TAs for you. We're going to work with you because we really want BIPOC and emerging, to be able to be in the fold and the fund as much as they can. So we were getting those. If it's technical assistance and they say, hey, if you need help, call staff. If you need help, call for help, that way if it's something you don't understand. So we started using those tools, in our arsenal. And then you were talking about, like what we do is incremental development strategy, meaning instead, like you said, instead of waiting a whole year, incrementally, we're going through evaluating what's working, what isn't working. I know we drink this up as developers, or like as a research and development consultant. I'm developing programming. I'm not really implementing them. You know what I mean? So I can project out 2 years for what this program should look like based on other, studies, or other organizations have done this in the past, or just dreaming it, just visioning it, not dreaming, but visioning it up for the organization. And then, but then I, again, as the consultant, have to go back and incrementally work with them about giving me the updates and not waiting for the last minute to try to do these reports, and a lot of funders are doing these month-to-month, reports as well. Even though we think they got a little bit too much time on their hands, but it's easier to kind of steer, us so that we're not doing things at the last minute, trying to get these reports and stuff done. So I just wanted to, and then also look at milestones and kind of like reiterate and go back. I have to go back and look at or take my client back to what you said. You know what I mean? Yeah, we did write this up. We developed this. We connected the dots with the other part of the development, but I have to steer them back to the conversation. And this is what we said, and is this pliable? And can this work for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is really, important what you were saying. I knew when I started off doing grants, or writing grants, or asking for money, I was always kind of scared of them. I think there were these people, sitting on these high chairs, and oh my God, can I have some money? But I eventually, and you know what? I think that they've become, but they're more open now. In my perception, is that funders, grantors, they're sort of opening the door to help rather than just giving you these guidelines. That's my perception. Maybe they did it all along. I didn't ask for it. So, for example, when I talked about when I wrote the USDA grant, I just, impact. Oh, all right, I'll write that down, not knowing that there's specific guidelines. But they stopped and said, hey, yeah, we see what you're trying to do. You need some help. So just by talking like you did, and I was listening to you guys process, you went back, and even when you're doing something in Chicago, it sounds like you have a relationship with some of those funders and with some of the grantors. And that's a good thing too. That's important that they know who you are.
Why do you think I show up at all these conferences and stuff? You know what I mean? And I'll go to accountability conferences, and one of my directors, when I was doing Chicago Artist Resource, I was one of their visual art researchers for their website. And I came back, and my director, Barbara Cannon, she says, Conan, she says, what are you doing this evening? Oh, I'm going to a City of Chicago accountability conference. She says, who does that? I mean, why would you go do that, right? But I like to show up and see, where the funding flows are going, the conversation, networking, and even though it wasn't about the arts per se, but it was about city government, right? And then and looking at the shakers and movers in the room, and just positioning yourself to be part of the conversation.
Exactly.
And then like
Exactly.
yesterday, the City of Sacramento Office of Arts and Culture, committee met, and they're the governing committee over the arts and culture for the city, and they had like their annual meeting, and I said, okay, I'm gonna listen in, be the fly on the wall. I didn't really have any comments to make, but I just wanted to see what they were proposing, and it was good because the Art and Public Places director, talked about the plan that they have for the city in terms of temporary installations, and how many art organizations and artists are coming to the city with their own funding, wanting to use city property to do installations on, may it be sculpture, may it be murals, or performance art, or whatever is temporary. And so they're putting policy together to adopt that, like a framework around, those conversations, right? And so the Art and Public Places manager was able to, because they didn't have a policy. I don't understand myself how they don't have a policy, because there were some issues that happened with the Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, which was, and then there was this no funding era. This was when they took and disassembled the commission, and which was under the tutelage of Michelle Walker, and they separated out Art and Public Places, which was a huge multi-million-dollar program to go under the convention center. So they dismantled it, right? And it was a sister at the time that was over it, the director. So she left and started her own philanthropic organization. So that, again, it was dismantled. And now it's and it's some other history, but now it's the Office of Arts and Culture, right? We're rebuilding it to the point the commissioners are saying, where's the inventory? Where's all the art that were maquettes? Where are all the planning things? Where's all this stuff that belonged to the commission? They don't know. And they've been having this conversation for 2 years since I've been listening in on their meetings. So now they have the Art and Public Places, director bringing these documents forward and helping to shape the narrative for the next 20, 30 years of the Arts and Culture Commission. But it's a fact of being in on the conversation. And so when we had our artist meeting last night, I was able to talk about it or add to the conversation about why is our project only being maintained for 5 years after we complete it, where others are in, what do you call it, perpetuity, or, that they're going to be, where the Arts Commission is going to see over those, maintain those. But for our project, with the Florham Road Community Beautification Project, it's only a 5-year maintenance plan. So after 5 years, we, as the museum, is going to have to figure out how to go out there and maintain the metal chair sculptures that we're installing, the banners, and the murals. But it was good to listen in on the conversation, because while they're putting a framework together and some policy, we'll be able to tag that. You know what I mean? And be part of the conversation. But and so that's where I was going to go with that conversation, with how we're putting together a report card evaluation. And remember last year when Daphne was on and we were talking about how the Native American Foundation in Woche, Vihi Wanton, which is one of the foundations funded the museum, and they, in their grant guidelines, they asked about our evaluation tool. And they said the evaluation tool. So that made us, we don't have an evaluation tool for the museum, you know, that, but there's several evaluations for different grant programs that we were funded, the California Arts Council, through Office of Arts and Culture, through some of the other foundations, but we just didn't have one for the museum. You know what I mean? So Daphne and I had to shape that evaluation and the questions so that we can take all that information and put it on the data, like the data SMU that the city, state, and federal government needs for our nonprofit reporting.
Right.
So again, we had to connect all these dots in evaluations, and then always incrementally go back and look at those evaluations, and you know, because they go like after people are evaluated, after our public gives us evaluations, after we evaluate the staff, after we evaluate programs, what do we do with this information, right? Where does it sit?
Right.
You know,
right.
So now we are plugging those numbers because those agencies, before we can even get started, like in Los Angeles, I couldn't even get started writing the grants for the client until I set them up on the data, you know, the data arts, and put all of that evaluation information, all of that into the database to even get started, because I needed that report in order to apply for the funding, you know, cycle. So yeah, a lot weighs on evaluations, and
a lot does weigh on evaluation, and even with some of the tools, if you're having a questionnaire, if you're having visitors in my business, I have people coming in. I need to know what I want to know from them. So even like if you're having a questionnaire, having someone fill out a questionnaire, if you're asking questions, are you going to get the answers? What do you want to know? So those questions, whatever you want to know, make sure you're asking the questions so that you can get your answers.
Right. When I was working here years ago, when I was arts education coordinator for the city and county of Sacramento, the Arts Commission, I actually gave a workshop for all of the grantees on how to create an effective evaluation tool, you know, and gave them the options of quantitative, qualitative, you know, and how they're going to evaluate their progress, and gave them, like within those professional development workshops that were mandatory as part of contracting, that they, you know, I just showed them the different, you know, evaluation types and tools, and then let them put their own evaluation tool together. You know what I mean? And then of course I had one for the program, because what I needed to report to the county, because it was funding or state funding that came into that program. Those are the things that I needed for my reports.
Right.
You know,
so good. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have any comments or suggestions or questions?
I just wanted to say that I enjoyed that interchange that you and Alpha were just having, because it brought back lots of thoughts when I first started in the nonprofit arena in terms of organizing and managing the business association. I, of course, was there to provide a service, to help out and to move things along and all of these things. Well, I came in the transition time when government was, particularly the city of Chicago, was really moving into the technology age. And of course, in that technology age, you know, we were beginning to deal more with data as opposed to, oh, I helped these people and I provided food and clothes. So it's like, so how many people did you help and how long did it take you? And then all these numbers and things. Oh, I just thought that was just so insensitive, and just, you know, we're here to help, we're not here to do that. And so as time is changing and moving and evolving, then I'm seeing the necessity of having these numbers. I'm seeing the necessity of beginning to say what impact and outcome is, you know, and input and output. And all of these things are, and so then now I'm finally understanding that there is a business to this thing. And it's not business and not-for-profit, and not-for-profit just helps out people. There is a business to not-for-profit. And so that has been something that I've just seen the evolutionary process take place in, and how it's mandatory now. And still there seems to be some resistance in communities of service to that business part. But I finally, you know, come to see the light to understand that that is credible information and is of necessity. And so even things like evaluations could actually help you answer the question, what happens to our art in perpetuity? And so that becomes an administrative part that has to be thought of, because it's business, it has to be maintained, it has to be updated, and, you know, all these things, you branding and all of these pieces, but that's the business part of the art that is not really separated from the art itself. So, you know, they talk about, let me see, what's the term they use, the back room, where the business part goes in. Well, you know, that needs to be brought out, and I guess we need to have more of an understanding of the value of it, because it's not the people who have money and then we're doing service and we're always trying to get money from people. You know, we have to change our scope on that. So I hope this wasn't, I hope this is the right group I'm talking to and I'm not offensive. But I mean, these are just some things I'm learned over the years, and that it's not offensive to talk about money and having money and getting money and making money and creating opportunities for money to be moved so that we can have arts and crafts and pleasure and all those kinds of things. So I just enjoyed
This is the right group to talk about that too, because my whole tagline is art is business.
Okay, awesome. Absolutely. Awesome. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Alicia, for your thoughts.
What about anecdotal, you know, evaluations and feedback?
Mhm.
Do you have anything like that?
No, anecdotal evaluation. I know that one thing that we did, like when I was working with university, and we had like a initiatives like what was it called? It had something to do with food. It was ethnic. Uh, uh, it had something to do with food and nutrition. It's FNP, Food and Nutrition Program.
Mm-hmm.
And they used how many people attended the workshops, you know, and they might have had a little quiz. But then they also did a combination with the anecdotal plus the number. So they would do success stories. And so whenever they were reporting, they may give numbers, but they would also give some success stories about what happened with an initiative, or they might have even singled out one parent, one mother, and she sort of represented what that served that population experience or what that population learned. So I know sometimes you can, I think it's nice to combine the two, the numbers and anecdotal, or what we call stories in your evaluation, you know, and one plays off of the other. Any other thoughts on that?
That's one of the things I'm having the artists do for this beautification project, is making sure that they videotape themselves, because it's easier than making these notes, you know, and do the visual journals, and talk about those experiences, and or getting that kind of feedback when the volunteers you know, a community engagement piece where they're talking about the project so that we can have those
Yeah,
testimonials or those,
yeah.
that feedback, positive, negative, whatever it is. On the presentation I did at the state on agile workforce, I had these 4 different L's on retrospective technique, and they were loved. And I'm asking the project team these 4 questions. What is it that you loved about the project? What is it that you loathe about the project? What is it that you learned about the project? And what did you long for on the project? So that they can give feedback on
Wow,
those 4 L's, right?
wow.
As an example,
Mm-hmm.
for kind of like a breakout activity to talk
Right,
about the project,
right,
and break it
right,
down,
right. And that's sort of like giving them a little bit of a guideline, instead of saying what did you think? You gave them some specifics that they can respond to, so that was really great. Um, just one more thing. I'm not going to, let's see what the time is like. I have one last sheet on there on the presentation, and it's the worksheet. And I just put this together today, but it's not, I use this all the time. And this visually
it's on the
explains,
PowerPoint.
yes, on the PowerPoint,
All
the
right, let me
last
pull it.
PowerPoint.
Let me pull it up.
Okay. Did it come up, Alpha?
Just a minute, I had to reload it up and go to
Oh,
the
okay,
last
no
page.
problem.
Rhonda, I'll take this opportunity to just say the presentation, what I really loved was just, I felt like I was in really good hands. I felt like you kept things flowing. The information you shared was very rich and informative. And you felt like a trusted source throughout. And so I just wanted to make that comment.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I like to be trusted. Is someone I put down on the bottom of some of the slides contact information. But I am representing the pop-up research station. And so they can contact me, but then I may say, I just left it open here. But I always know that people need, if when we distribute these or when this video is being shown, somebody's gonna want to have some contact information. So thanks a lot for your comment. Just quickly on the last one, it's sort of like a worksheet. And what this does is that it sort of visually lays out what your thought process would look like or what it should be. You have the vision, mission, and then your goals. And you might have 3 goals, you might have 6. I wouldn't say have 10, that's too many goals. But for each goal then that you've identified, then you would look then at the action step, which is a term. Action step to be taken is what? Based on that goal. You might have 3 action steps, you might have just 2, you probably will not have just one because goals are sort of comprehensive, so that needs to be broken down. So this is a visual representation of your thought process. So you have goal 1. What do you need to do in order to accomplish that goal? What is the action step to be taken? Okay, identify the action step. So again, what is your input? What supplies do you need? What staff do you need? All that kind of thing is your input. And so it's easy just to, you can scribble on a piece of paper like this And then also, what is your output? Sometimes we think about the output first. Well, I'm going to be doing workshops, and I guess that's okay. But then you're still going to have to go back to input. What do I need to do those activities? What do I need to do those workshops? So, and then the next part then is another term that we talked about, evaluation. Putting that in even as you're planning. You can change it, but at least it's a flowing process. Evaluate, how will I know that this goal was accomplished? So you're constantly asking yourself that question. So I'm not going to have us do this as a group activity. The presentation that I put together, I know some of us know basically some of the things that I'm going over, but this was like to just refresh our memories, and then plus people who are new people that are coming on board who are trying to do activities. I know that Alicia has a lot of people in her community that come in and ask her how do we do this? How do we do something? So just using some, understanding the process. So I'm glad that it flowed, and I hope that it will flow. The information will flow for those who listen to this presentation later on, so that they'll understand, some of the things that they need to be successful. Okay. So that's it. I'm going to close out. I want to thank you all for participating, for attending. Thank you for inviting me. And just good luck. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. Was looking forward to always, looking at this whole evaluation, because it's a constant thing that's asked of us in these grant proposals, the evaluation.
Right.
It's always good to
Right.
refresh and refresh, and reset, and then look in retrospect of the work that we're doing as we're moving forward on a fast track,
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
so.
Good.
And then this
And
also
Alicia,
becomes
thank you
part
for
of,
attending.
it also becomes part of the strategic plan, we were awarded another cohort, grant through the city here, so that our board and our staff attend these cohort meetings just for this type of training. It's 18 months, but they give organizational support. So, because that's what I when they did an assessment and the evaluation, I said, here are the weak areas in this organization, right? And the weak areas of our board, and saying that we need to, because those were the questions on the assessment. And then you number and you rank them, and then that was the highest ranking area was our board, and it's been a challenge making sure that we have this board, and they've been sitting there, but basically they have been inactive. So now we're saying you have to be an active board, and then, but by doing that, I had to take that assessment, through the city, and say, if you're talking about youth development, this board got to be stronger, and so that's one of the weak areas. But again, we got organizational support for those board members, staff, and consultants to come on as a team to be part of the bigger cohort and training. Like that. So, these evaluations, they come up, and the museum assessments, they come up, and what I mean, on and on and on. And then so, can't just say you're doing something, you got to actually prove it.
Yeah. And just like an aside for Alicia, I don't know if she knows about the Sojourner Truth Museum, Alicia. Is that where you are now?
Yes, I'm here at the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum. I'm in the Somalia Lewis Gallery. And the exhibition that is on display right now in the gallery is Soul of the South. Curated in partnership with Gallery 157 and the artists that are part of the King's what is it? Part of the King's something. Kings of the South, yeah.
Kings
Okay.
of the South.
Yeah,
Wow,
they're a
that's
group of
interesting.
artists. Yeah, they're a group of artists that are doing placemaking, out there in Arkansas, where is it, Alabama.
Oh, okay. Wow. Nice,
Oh,
nice.
no, that's great.
All right
All right.
then.